welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. My name is Heather George, and today we will be covering the topic of accessing and using multiple data sources in SyteLine. Tim McManus is going to be the presenter, and I'm going to be helping him out with any questions that come in along the way. So as a few housekeeping items, the lines are all muted, and if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A, and we'll be sure to try and get to all of them throughout the presentation. It is being recorded and will be made available in our Lunch and Learn section of our Learning Center on our website after the presentation. And I think that about covers it. If you have any questions, you're also welcome to reach out to us at info@aitbusiness.com. And with that, I would like to welcome Tim to begin the presentation. Tim?
Thank you, Heather, and
You're
thanks
welcome.
everyone for joining. Yeah, we've been doing these things kind of like once a month now, right, Heather?
We have, yes.
Pretty much. And, we've been taking topics that we think are useful. And this is a topic that, combination of every customer we go into, a new implementation, and even existing customers have challenges with some of this stuff. And, on top of that, some of the tools and technology here in the both the Mongoose tool set alone, if you're just on-prem, or the Infor OS with Ion, if you're a cloud customer, or both, you can use those tools. You can use the Mongoose tools if you're a cloud customer as well. Make it pretty accessible to do some cool stuff. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing here. Basically, what data, integrating data, how can that, help me, help my company, what tools we have. I'm going to go through a couple examples of this, in one in Mongoose, one in Data Lake, talk a little bit about Ion API integration and some examples. In terms of, Q&A, we can do that at the end, but if you've got questions, shoot them into the Q&A section here, and Heather will if it's a really tough question, she's going to ignore it, but otherwise she's going to pass it to me, and we'll field that. So, okay. How can this help me? What are some examples here of what we're doing? Almost always, if we're doing a new implementation from somebody who's replacing their, Ask Man, or, Mass 90 or Sage, or whatever it is, they've got, maybe history that they want to bring over. And, one example we'll talk about is, all my production history, right? Well, do I really want to convert all that stuff and load the jobs table and muck that up with all this stuff? Or, what do they need? Maybe I can do that in a smarter way. Maybe you've got a, affiliate company, your parent company or sister, they've got a different application, and you actually, you're not multi-site yet. You want to be able to get some visibility on some things. Because of that, you'd be able to do, analytics. Maybe your CRM is outside the system, Zoho CRM, or, Salesforce or something, and you just want, some visibility on there and some integration. Another thing we see all the time is, somebody out there in somewhere land, engineering or, inventory, has built something, the owner's son or somebody's cousin has built some proprietary app in Access or something that they use all the time. Why not take that and bring it into the four walls of, the ERP implementation? One example, maybe we're getting transactions from or information from other partners, from vendors or from customers, an EDI thing that's not, not really ANSI X12, Radley, EDI, or SPS Commerce or whatever, but it's, something that they send that I want to actually have and get into my system. Right now we have spreadsheets, and customer service is like getting the spreadsheet, they're downloading it and typing stuff in and things like that. So there's probably others. One thing that I'd be interested if you have, through the course of this, things that you're like, oh, you know what, I could do this with it. I'd be really interested to hear it because, yeah, we haven't heard everything. So what are the tools we have? Whoops. We have a PowerPoint. I'll stop right there. We have Mongoose that we'll go into. And we have also in there some of the Ion Data Lake stuff. But before I press spacebar, I want to make sure I'm a little safe here. Yeah, okay. Also Ion. But enough said about that. Let me get rid of this slide and go to the next example. We're just going to kind of hop into an example. This is the one I brought up earlier. Is I've got all this job history, right? And I want my production people want to know what it is, or maybe it's purchase history or something like that. Whatever it is, I want that. I'd love to have it. I'd love to have it accessible, like right in SyteLine when I'm working. I don't want to load the PO table. I don't want to load the job table, the job transactions and all that sort of stuff. So how can we do that? We're going to go in and get into that. So little background before we do, we're going to talk a little bit about just, and this is going to be sort of technical, this presentation, but data, where is it in SyteLine? When I look at the, the item master screen or something, what am I actually, what am I seeing out there and where is it? So I'm going to hop into Cloud Suite here real quick and Cloud Suite, SyteLine, excuse me. Let's go into, say, the items form here. And I always say it's a good thing I'm not on a demo now with the performance. I can blame my daughter and my wife. Her daughter's online schooling in the house, and my wife is online teaching in the house. So, and I know they're playing video games, both of them, which is why it's so slow. Okay, so if we look at this form here in in SyteLine, I've got data, right? Great, I got a part number, I've got a description, I've got all kinds of stuff about the item, but I also actually have other things in here as well, like the product code, right? I'm going to go in and click on that, and it's going to drop down this product code list, right? Well, that's the product code of the item, but where's this list coming from? It's actually coming from the product code table, right? The unit of measure table, things like that. So there's a number of different tables that are on this, and different files or tables, whatever you want to call them. It's coming from a lot of different places, and how does it actually get in here, and what am I looking at? Like if you looked at the custom order screen, same thing. I've got customer name and address. Then I've got, the order entry screen. You get the customer information, things like that, terms, code, ship via. All these tables are joined. And where they come from is, I'm going to go into design mode, which is this little paintbrush up here, or Control E in my case. And it's going to ask me my scope. And basically this is, if I were to make a change, do I want to make it for me or the whole company or whatever? But I am going to go in here, and that's going to put me in design mode. Going into design mode for a reason here. I'm going to go out and start looking at this, some of these fields and see where are they actually coming from, right? So this is coming from material type, but from where, right? It's called object. Well, and this is going to be my unit of measure, and this will be my product code from object. So if I go here to look at it, my collection, what's called my collection, is my SL items. So it's called a collection on this form, but what we're looking at here is an IDO. And an IDO is Infor's way, or SyteLine's way of taking a bunch of different tables and data and things like that, so that I don't want to go into this form and program, like go find the unit of measure table and blah, blah, blah. They've done it for me. So really, I've got an IDO collection, and behind the scenes, they've joined it to different tables, and they've put rules on it and all this sort of stuff. But the point is, what I have here is an IDO. And an IDO is what I'm going to have to do. If I want to put something on a form in Siteline, I've got to do it through an IDO. All right. So what we're going to do here, back to our example of our, job table, right? So I've got this table of job history, and really all I care about here is what did I make and when did I make it? How many did I make and what did it cost, right? So I've got this table that basically looks something like this. It's got, part number and the date and cost, things like that. That's what I want to have in my application. Okay, so I'm going to go back to here, and let's go back here. What I'm going to do, I'm in that design mode, and I go into definition, and there's a table called new data maintenance. Now, we're going to go through a bunch of stuff here. Just a little warning, if you do this, make sure that you are logged in as either the SA account or that you have a developer license. Because in order to create, IDOs and schema tables and all that sort of stuff, you have to have developer level access. You have that in the SA account as a default. You also have it as a development license. And the thing is, like when I go to do this, it doesn't tell me, hey, you don't have SA level. It lets me go through all this stuff we're about to see. And when I hit go, then it tells me. So again, it's in red. Make sure you've got that. So when I click this new data maintenance wizard, right, what I'm going to be doing is I'm basically creating a form, but I'm also creating the underlying data behind it. So that spreadsheet that I looked at with part number, date, and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to go in here, and this wizard is actually going to take me through this, right? So I've got my name of what I want to call this form. I'm going to, some technical stuff, the project that's in there. I'm not going to get too deep on the technical stuff. And if you want to try this and have questions on this, my email is going to be in the end of this thing. What's the form type? Do I want it that split screen thing, or do I want it grid only, or what? And then basically what it's going to do is say, hey, what do you want to put in here, right? I want the job, excuse me. I want the part number, and this is going to be the Mass 90 job, we'll call it. And I actually, when I built this thing, I labeled it as that. This screen just shows job, part number, my job date, completed cost, things like that. That's all I want to put. Now, it's going to ask me what are my data types, right? And I can put in, it's a string or date or things like that. But one of the cool things about Mongoose is you've got this thing called a property class, and it's kind of cut off up there, but property class, which translates into a SQL data type. So what a class does is it tells this piece of data to behave a certain way. So for instance, in the item, if I assign that to an item property class, what's going to happen is in my form, now when I open that up, that little drop down, click drop down, you got the item master, there's a, lookup, I can right click, go into details, all of that stuff. Again, it's not, I don't program that into the form. This Mongoose does it for me. So it's pretty cool. And it's nice to have in here. So I put the item type as a property class in here because I want it to, all the items I'm putting in there exist and things like that. So it's going to ask me that next. I don't need a property class. I can just put whatever I want, data wise in here. Okay. And then I go next, and boom. When I finish that, what I get is I'm kind of going out into the SQL table. It built the SQL table for me, assigned the indexes and all that sort of stuff. And it created those SQL columns for me here. There's my part number, job date. Also has the standard ones that are in all of the SyteLine tables. Create date, create in workflow. That's to do with the event system. So it's building this to work within the context of your SyteLine app, just like any other table. It essentially becomes part of your app. It also will create the IDOs. So
Tim, can I interject and ask a question that's popped in, please?
Yes.
We have someone asking if the order of properties and columns matter.
Not significantly. What we'll see when I click through and look at the form, the way that the properties display on the form that I just created through the wizard are probably going to be in line with how I actually added them there. But in terms of any kind of material impact, it really doesn't matter.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, so I've got my IDO and all that stuff I don't really need to understand or worry about is in there. And the IDO properties, again, there's my fields that I put in there. There's the the SyteLine fields, and there's my form. And as I mentioned, I actually changed the little label on this thing, changed the name on this. But this is my simple little form. It's a split screen because that's what I asked for. Very simple. So boom, I have my job history in the application and I'm done, right? Well, now I got the user that says, you know what? Every time I want to go look at something, I got to open this form and I got to search on the item and, blah, blah, blah. Can't I just click it from somewhere? Well, you can. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to populate the data, right? So I've got my little spreadsheet there or text file, CSV, whatever it is. I'm going to copy and paste rows append in here. And this, paste rows append works for a lot of data. If you've got 100 million records, there are other ways to get that in there aside from paste rows append that you can do. But in this example, that's what we're doing. So I populated that. So now I've got data in my table. And now I want to actually take this and put it into SyteLine and link it to SyteLine. So what I'm going to do in this example is, where do I want to look at job history? Well, maybe when I'm on the items form, right? I've got all these little buttons, on the right of my item form to go to, item warehouse, my stock locations, my bills of materials, all that sort of stuff. Well, I want one for my NAS 90 job history. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into design mode and I'm going to add a button. And where I'm going to add that button is if we got any of my developers on here, or AIT developers, they're cursing me right now because you never put it right here. But I'm going to do that just because I can. So basically, I dropped that button over there, and I'm now basically I named it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an action here. So in that button property, I'm going to create a new event. In this case, it's just launch my mass job history. You click those little, what is it, the ellipses things?
Yeah, the ellipses.
3-dot thing. You click that, it's going to go out and, it doesn't exist, right? This launch mass history. So now I actually want to create a new one, right? And it's going to ask me what type of event, what do you want to have happen when this takes place? I'm going to run the form, and it's going to be linked to my item form, right? So that's good. I'll do that. I could just run the form and launch it, and then it's, on its own. Different options there, but I'm going to use as a linked form. And then it's going to ask me for parameters, all right? I don't have any parameters. But because it knows it's a form, when I click on that parameters, it's going to help me and basically say, well, what form do you need? All right. And that drop down is in there. That form's going to be in there because I created it. It's part of SyteLine now. So I do that. And here's the important thing down here is when I'm on my FA 10,000 bicycle and I click that, I want the, the Mass 90 job history to be showing me job history for my FA 10,000, right? So you can link it here. In this particular case, it's a simple join, item and item. But if you were to do something more complex, you can use kind of multiple criteria in your links. I do that, and then I hit save, refresh my cache, launch, and there in my item master, I've got this little job button now. And by the way, seriously, I wouldn't put it here because if you you apply a patch to this form, or if you're on Cloud Suite 10, multi-tenant SaaS, when they do the uplift, this could cause trouble. You can do form sync and all that. Typically what you do is, maybe put it on a different tab, or you can put it on the button column there, but, when you get your uplifts, you're going to have to do form sync, things like that. Depending on how you scope it, which in the beginning, remember it asked me, do I want it for me or the company or a group? Anyway, that's another conversation, but there's my button. When I press that button here, I will go out and that's going to launch my form and show me all the job history for that.
Nice.
Any questions at this point?
Yeah, there's a few that have just come in. One you spoke to a little bit about, but if you could maybe go into more detail if it works. The question is, should you copy the form before you add the button in case CSI uplift overrides your changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So kind of let's go back there. If I copy the form, essentially what I'm doing when I go in there and I edit this thing and I use my user scope of it's for, I'm going to go back here real quick and say form definition, site developer impersonation here. So when I do this, when I go in to edit the item form or make any change to anything, what this is doing here is this is actually making a copy of that item form. And it's making a copy, in this case, with my own personal name on it that my own person only will see. If I, for maybe the production group, right, in the item, they're the only ones that care about job history. So for that production group, it'll make a copy for them. And when the uplift happens, the uplift is only going to copy the original, what's called the vendor level item form that can't be touched. And basically what you're going to have is you're going to have a new updated, vendor level master form. Your copy is still going to be out here. So any changes that took place to that form, maybe they fixed a bug where, something wasn't calculating. If you're going to want to have those changes in there, that's where you do form sync. And what form sync is going to do is it's going to take that new uplifted form and your scoped version here of this form and say, okay, well, what changes are in there? Apply those changes. So sorry that was so long-winded. When you do this, it does make a copy. Is really, unless one of my other people here want to tell me different, there's no reason to make your own copy.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that answer. And the other one, I'm not sure if this is something you plan on getting into or not, but they are asking, how do these customizations fit in with SOX or SOX change controls?
Yeah, that is.
Is that one more than we can do?
I mean, not into the weeds. The kind of your internal procedures in there. It's really going to be, on up to you. I think Amira's on. We've got some people, customers that have done. They have to do software validation with FDA requirements, and when they make changes, they have to document it. SOX or ISO 9000 and whatever is going to be similar sort of stuff. So it's really, that is a different question for which I'm not an expert, but I know.
Well, maybe we can get back to them on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and we have one other question that's just come in. If you want to populate the table from dynamic data, would you just connect it to the new table and update that way?
From dynamic data. So from a table that already exists, maybe. I don't want to create my own new table, but I want to create a form to some other table. Is that's the question? You can.
From outside a system is what they're telling me.
Okay. Yeah. Hold that thought, because we're gonna keep going on that.
Perfect. Thanks. That's
Okay.
it for now.
All right. So here we've solved the problem of, and actually we did this one customer. They're like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do a new system because I have all this history. And, we showed them this thing. They're like, oh, okay. No problem. Another thing that you can do here, you remember I went through that wizard, create wizard of, build the form and the IDO, and I typed in all the fields and what type there and all that sort of stuff. There's another tool in here, and I'm not going to kind of go through this, but it's an XML to IDO Wizard. So if you actually have XML documents that are, that are out there, let's say, my customer was sending me my EDI via XML, you can actually use this to go in, you upload the XML file, and it will try to interpret what it is and actually build the IDO based on that. That builds the IDO, that does not build the form. And by the way, on that one, you still want to be SA. There is another option. I don't know if that person who asked about dynamic data was a cloud customer on-prem, but there's something out there called Outrigger profiles. And what this is specifically designed to do is just what you asked, is I've got some dynamic data out there. In this particular case, it's, it's SQL Table, or it's a progress. I wonder how many of you actually on Siteline have come from progress. But different sort of things that you can actually set that up and point to those external tables and get to your data from there. That is one way. Okay, the next example is I have, my incoming order from, EDI order from the customer. And it's not really EDI. It's this simple little thing that they, that they send me, which is basically, a spreadsheet, there's their order, part number, due date, price, all that sort of stuff. Very simple, right? But that's coming from outside the system, and I'm actually getting that through like an API and an FTP site or something like that. I don't want to, touch it. Here's where what we're going to do is kind of get into Ion, InfluorOS and Ion, and we're going to create a connection this way, or create data in an IDO this way. So first thing I do, go into Ion Desk here, and if we look up here in my, where are you? Right there. Go out. If you're, on multi-tenant SaaS, up here, from your home page, you've got, different options here. Here's my Ion Desk and so forth. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to go to the data catalog, and I'm going to go out to object schemas, and I'm going to create a new schema. And one thing that's totally awesome here is this actually allows me to build it manually, or if I've got like sample data like that spreadsheet and that CSV file, all I have to do is drop that in there, and it's looking through and figuring out what's what, and it's going to start to build that table and give it some names and properties. And it says, okay, cool. Here are the things that I've determined are in your table, and here are the data types. I have an opportunity to change those at this point. And then, next, shows me what it's about to do. I hit finish, and now what I've done is in the actual data lake itself, I've created a data object in there. And for those of you on multi-tenant SaaS who are kind of pining away for your SQL days, when your data is in here in the data lake, you actually can use, SQL commands in here in SQL language to go and do things. Okay, so what I did was I went and I created that table in the data lake. So now it's out in Ion. And ultimately what I want to do is I want to use Ion API to, to go out and get, get that information, or when the customer calls, API, or you can even set it up where you just have a job out there that goes out to an FTP site and grabs it and populates it. But that's still an Ion, and what I want to do is I want to get it in my application. So now we're back into SyteLine, and there's something called our Data Lake IDO Wizard. And that, when I launch that, that's going to come up, and it just grumps on this thing and says, blah, can't get a token, turn this off. So just when you see it, if you do this, it's normal, just turn it off. And then, it's going to ask, select a data lake object. And in this particular case, I created that with my Acme Anvil EDI name. So there it is. Add a caption, go through here, and when I finish this, it will create the IDO for me here. Okay. So now I'm going to go out and now I actually want to build a form for that. So I'm going to go out and this is where I'm just going to go out and build a form, right? There's my new form. It's going to be my, my split multi-view, all that sort of stuff. And here now I'm going to, in the data source, I'm going to look at that IDO that I just created from my data lake wizard, which is out there. There are my tables. There's all the other kind of SyteLine stuff that they build in there, and unlimited user defines. This is going to bring me out here, and again, here I've got an opportunity. Remember those property classes or component classes? Got an opportunity to give some personality to these things, and then I go through and finish. It asks if I want to save this template, and it's usually checked by default. And then it yells at me that I don't have access to that. So just save yourself the trouble. And there's basically my, my form. The one thing, and I'm not going to go too deep into this either, is that in order to, there's a little bit more plumbing that has to happen. Going to the data lake, you've actually got to go back into your collection, use a custom load method. There's a lot of information out here on docs.infor.com that walks you through this. But basically what I've done is, I've gone to sorry, my dog is doing something here. I apologize. It's a new dog. I'm not used to it. So let me go back here. Yeah, so basically what we did is we created this this connection. Now I've got something in Data Lake that I can get to from within SyteLine as well. Okay. Now, one thing that you've got to set up, and again, this is all in the, there's actually videos out on YouTube that help with this, and in the help is now what I want to do is actually kind of build some connection points. Okay. Before I do that, there's one thing that you've got to kind of set up for that communication to work back and forth with Data Lake and SyteLine or Mongoose is you've got to go in here. I'm back in Mongoose. I'm sorry, I'm back in Ion and go to authorized apps. There's my Data Lake Wizard, IDO Data Lake Wizard. You've got to actually connect the instance of Ion to the instance of Mongoose or SyteLine that you're running. Go through, you download credentials. When it does, you actually want to create a service account, put your name in here or whoever that user is going to be for, an admin user or something like that. Go ahead and download it. Now I've got that file. Then I actually got to go back into SyteLine to perform Ion API servers. Go in there. There's typically what I've seen in almost every instance, there's something in here already. Right? Well, get rid of it, just delete it. And then what happens is you have a blank space with the server ID of 1. You make sure you change this guy to 0. And then you basically import that file that you just downloaded. And what it's doing, it's just creating some credentials so that you can have that conversation between Data Lake and Mongoose. Any questions at this point?
There's no new questions that have come in. Oh, one just came in. Is this all standard Infor functionality?
Yes.
We did get a little bit more information from one of the previous questions that you were answering with the SOX change controls, and we're going to take that one offline. I think that's probably the best way to handle it, but it doesn't look like anything else has come in at this time.
Okay. Well, we can also get it at the end too. We're not going
Sure,
to keep it full hour.
definitely.
Okay. So back to now, kind of making things work on the ION side. Like, how am I going to get that some of that information back and forth? What we did with that data lake connection, that's good. But now I actually want to go out and get, I want to get that EDI file from the customer or from an FTP site or, wherever I'm going to do. So in ION, you build a connection point. And that connection point, in this particular case, here's, their orders are coming from, the Magento commerce site. There's my Acme Envil EDI orders. If I go into that, basically what I'll see is actually from there, you actually go into data flows, excuse me. And I realize I lost the slide, or I left the slide off for that. So let's just go in here, look into ION Desk, go into my connection points, and I don't want to save anything there. And I'm going to this guy. And basically, there's some setup on this. In this particular case, what I've done is this connection point is it's an FTP process. There's my server and, blah, blah, blah information. I've got my files I'm looking for, and I can, this is probably its own, its own session, but, this particular case, every 5,000 milliseconds, it's going to wake up and it's going to go out and pull this thing, see if I've got any documents out there. If I do, it's going to go in and read it. And now I've got my data. When that happens, what I want to do is I'm going to need a data flow. And that data flow is basically telling me, okay, now you got this thing. What do you want to do, right? Here it is. What's next? Well, first thing I want to do is map it, but to what? In this particular case, it's my SyteLine ERP, which you'll set up for whichever site or instance that you've got out there. So I'm taking that EDI file and I'm mapping it here. How am I mapping it? I'm going to go out here, and this again is all standard functionality. Go out and it's looking at, on the Magento side, it's looking at this document with everything I need, and on the Siteline side, it's looking at this, and this graphical mapper. Basically, I can just go out and start to, drag things over there and kind of get things tied up. You can kind of see some of the things it helps you with, warnings, or you're good or you're definitely not good type of things. But that mapping you can do. And again, this is, from the outside, I'm getting information to come in and populate that data lake table so that it's available into Siteline. Another cool thing about this is it's not just, mapping. I could do a lot of other things. This is really just a workflow, and I could do something in here where if for some reason, something doesn't go the way I want it to, I can actually go out and create and launch an ION workflow that I've developed. And now, I'm emailing people, I'm doing all that sort of stuff that, this came in and I don't know, something's wrong with it, but, it'll still process. It goes to somebody, they look at it, I know what that is. They click OK, and it goes through the rest of the process. This stuff that's in here in ION, it's, I'm not an expert in it yet. We aren't, but there are some tools in here that are really outstanding. we were actually one of the first people to, one of the first partners to sell and implement the old Inforce, which was the Salesforce integration using Ion, like, I don't know, 0.1 or something. And it was quite an adventure with the thing not working that well, but it's, where they're at right now, it's solid, and there's some really nice tools in here. Okay, connection points, data flows, we did that. And that basically kind of getting back to, what we talked about, data from, different places. You can take that and integrate it right into the ERP. You can, actually, if you have the cloud, the multi-tenant cloud suite, you can actually build your own applications. And to some extent on-prem as well, you can build your own custom applications using, tools like this. So
We have, sorry, go ahead.
That was pretty much what I wanted to cover.
Awesome. Well, thank you. There is another question that's come in the meantime. The person is asking, can you link local SQL Server to CSI in the cloud using one of your methods you went over here?
Yes, ultimately, absolutely. You would do that through your data lake, and you would create a connection to your SQL Server on that side of through Ion and populate data lake. But yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, thank you. And no other new questions have come in. Do you want to try and get back to that other one? See if we can try and help them address it?
Yeah, we have a little bit of time.
Okay, so the further detail, going back to repeat the question initially, they asked, how do these customizations fit in with SOX change controls or SOX? And the further detail, we need to have full change control and segregation of duties with customizations and rollout into a live environment along with complete traceability. It looks like they want to try and figure that information out because they're looking on potentially upgrading or moving from their current ERP environment.
Okay. Yeah. If you would, one of these email addresses, go ahead and if you want to reach out, we can have that conversation, because we've done Sarbanes-Oxley compliance stuff, and I mean it down to the point where your users and your user groups and their permissions, like mutual exclusivity type of things, to change control that, like I said, we've had to do for FDA and aerospace customers. So there are a lot of tools out there, and contact us. We can just hop on a call for a little bit and discuss what you need.
Yeah, I think that would be good. They provided their contact information, so I'll go ahead and shoot an email over to them and CC you into it so that we can start that conversation after the presentation.
All right. Any other questions come in?
Not that I'm seeing at this time.
Okay.
No.
Well, I'll give you 10 minutes back of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Tim, for the very informative presentation. And thanks everyone for joining us. And once again, I'll be sure to put this up on our website as soon as the recording is processed. We'll be having our next Lunch and Learn in February, so we hope that you can join us for that as well. And I hope you have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.